because
Hopefully it will to everybody else too when we're done.
Mike, do you want me to wait another minute or two before starting, or would you like to get going?
It's up to you, whatever you want to do. I think we're pretty flexible here. We got a small group, so.
Well, why don't I get started, then people,
Sure.
Now that I see people, I don't know why the admit element didn't work this time, but people seem to be able to come in seamlessly, so that's great.
Sure.
All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm just excited that Mike Taylor is going to be joining us tonight to talk about this great topic. What would you like to steal from marketing? And,
Oops,
that's
hold on.
amazing.
That's not supposed to happen.
Ooh,
Sorry.
Oh, great. This is the Mid-New Jersey ATD chapter speaker series. My name is Jenny Glenn, and sorry, I'm reading my thing, sorry. My name is Jenny Glenn, and I want, before Mike takes over the screen, just to go over a few things that are chapter related. First, I wanted to introduce Otito Akbar as our newest Vice President of Programming. She's going to be taking my place, and I'm so excited to introduce her. You can see her on the screen. She is an associate professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University and principal consultant at Get Fab Editorial Communications and Publishing. And we're really excited to see what kind of programming Otito is going to share with us in 2023. So thank you and welcome, Otito.
Thank you, Jenny.
And a few upcoming events. Actually, tomorrow, there's going to be a regional webinar about focused on clear communication and how to get what you ask for and need. And that's going to be, you can register for that on our site. It's sponsored by the Greater Philadelphia chapter. And then for the speaker series in March, on March 14th, Dr. Sam Weisrock will be speaking, and she's talking on the topic of gentle persuasion, understand the power of the written word in shaping our opinions and beliefs. And so that one also sounds really good. And please go ahead to our website to check on upcoming events. I put both our website and Mike's website links in the chat. So I wanted to now turn to what we're all waiting for, is Mike Taylor. And he's been working in the L&D space for over 20 years, and also lectures worldwide. It's a teacher of instructional design, and we're really thrilled to have him here. So I'm going to let you take over, Mike.
All right. All right, thanks. So I'm kind of glad we have a sort of a smaller group here so we can keep things kind of conversational and informal. So, feel free to jump in here, and, I'm going to have a couple opportunities here for you guys to weigh in on different things. And so love to hear your thoughts and take questions and all that sort of stuff. Jenny shared the link to my website, so I'll give you a couple chances at the end if you want a copy of the slides and links to references and resources, any of that sort of stuff. I'll give everything to you and give you plenty of opportunities. It's all on my website, which she shared the link to. But I'd like to start with hearing from you guys. So we've got a couple responses already while we were waiting. And if you would prefer, feel free to just jump in and you can say it if you don't want to type it in. But ask this question of a lot of people. I've probably asked this question of over 1,000 people. And typically, there's something that pops into most people's mind. So I'm curious to hear from you guys, is there anything that you wish you could steal from the marketing field or from the marketing department if you have one at your organization? And feel free, if you want to just do it in chat or you want to jump in and just talk, that's fine too. We got a small group, that's not an issue.
I'll share something. I'm not stealing, I'm taking it from both sides of my brain. One is a marketing professor and the other is doing instructional design. So
yeah,
I talk to myself a lot. And the idea is to market what you're doing and to market your thoughts on instructional design, development of content, making sure that the learners understand the purpose and objective of what you're doing, and sell your ideas and be as engaging as possible, just like marketing is doing. So
Yeah,
I think it's a
absolutely.
nice tie-in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's probably a case to be made that we're all marketers in some sense. Just probably a lot of us don't realize it. So you think about you meeting somebody, first impressions, right? There's probably an element of marketing in a lot of that stuff. And I like these answers that we have so far, being about subtle persuasion, multiple touch points, and learning events, creativity, brand messaging. All that's all really good stuff. One of my favorite ones that I got recently was somebody said they wish they could steal marketing's. They called it efficiency of messaging, and I thought that was a really good one. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go. It looks like there's somebody typing, so I'll give you a second to finish to get one more answer.
Well, I was going to say, this is something that literally came up at a conference many years ago where people tried to get learning and development people to understand that we have to promote what we do. It's not just enough to have it out there. But I think from my perspective, I have such a learning and development focus that I don't have a very good marketing focus.
Yep. And that kind of leads us sort of the perfect thing here, segue to, why would we look at marketing? Why not accounting or finance, or, what is it about marketing? Anybody have anything that just kind of pops to your brain? Like, why would marketing be a good candidate for people in L&D?
Well, it's so important to get your message across to the learners. And often, I don't know, it isn't always as effective as it could be.
Yeah,
So-
that's true. That's a good one.
So,
I think
Mm.
this is I think there's sort of a big, at a high level, L&D and marketing, we both are trying to do the same thing. And if you think about it, marketers are trying to get people's attention and get them to do new things, buy something, buy insurance, whatever it is, donate blood, marketing, that sort of stuff. And that's what we're doing, the same thing. We have to get people's attention. But I think sometimes we lose sight of that getting attention part. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we definitely want them to think and act in new ways. So I think if you consider that we both have the same goal, if you think about it, I believe it's typically very different approaches to how marketing comes at it as compared to how L&D comes at it. So this is an example I like to use to sort of illustrate that. And let's say, okay, your boss comes in and they go to the training department or the learning development department, whatever it is. They say, hey, we've got this goal and we need to sell more hamburgers. And if you take it to a sort of a typical, maybe old school, maybe traditional, whatever you want to call it, training department, you might kind of get sort of something that looks like that. We've got, sort of facts and figures and just details and bullet points. But if we go to the marketing department, we walk down the hall or to the next building or whatever it is, we go to the marketing department, we're probably much more likely to get something that looks like that. And so if we put those side by side, what do you notice? What's the difference?
Visual.
Visual?
it has a creative spin on words.
Right?
Less
Right.
words.
Play on words, right? Yeah, good. That's a good one.
And less words.
Less words.
Less, uh-huh.
Yeah.
The one on the left, I couldn't even read it. I'd be already down the highway, but I'd be past it, right?
Yeah.
Something about, I don't know, food. I don't know what it was. I'm already past it. So yeah, that's a good one.
Just graphics, using graphics.
Visuals, right? Like that. I
And
think
once it
that's
appeal
part
to
of
your
the efficiency of
senses.
messaging is letting visuals carry some of that messaging. So, I'm looking at that. I haven't eaten dinner yet. And I'm like, that looks pretty good to me. I might run down the street and go get not that I would want a Big Mac, but it makes me hungry. I can feel it, right? There's some sort of internal things happening there. So that begs the question, why do you think L&D does it so differently? Why do you think those two different fields are so different. Any thoughts on that?
I think we think about content and we don't think about how to sell the content or how
Yeah.
to put the content over.
Yeah, that's a good one.
People make decisions based on emotion more than intellect, and I think we're more on the intellect side.
Yep, I think absolutely agree with that.
Mhm.
I think also another thing is I think marketers are much more closely tied to outcomes and results. So they run a campaign, they either get more sales or they don't get more sales. And granted, that's hard sometimes for some of our projects based on what you're working in, but I think that's also a factor in sort of how they do stuff, and maybe they evolve a little bit quickly, stuff like that. So yeah, go ahead, Beth.
I think marketers think about their audience. I come
Yes.
from a marketing family. My dad was an ad man, and he would always say to me, you know, don't make it complicated, dumb it down, keep it simple, give me the one, you know.
It absolutely, and I would say I don't think it's dumbing it down. I think it's clarifying and simplifying and
I agree
unpacking it,
with you. Yeah,
right?
yes,
Because if it's too complex, you get nothing.
right.
I saw a quote, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was a marketing person, and they said, you know, to be a good marketer, you have to be passionately curious about your customer.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good way to capture that. And I think that, you know, we could benefit that as well. And so to Jeff's point about, you know, we are driven by emotions, all that sort of stuff, like there's a reason that you don't see bullet points in ads. So, you know, if you take nothing else away from this, like, is there a way that you can kind of, you know, get rid of bullet points in, you know, whatever stuff you're doing? So that's sort of the setup, the segue. There's a lot more than 4. I could talk about this probably for 3 days about stuff we could steal. We could get into details. Bianca Bauman and I talk about this a lot. We've done full day workshops. We're in the process of writing a book about all this stuff. So there's a lot more to it. Hopefully these are kind of some of the top 4 things that will get you started, maybe to be a little curious to look into more things and stuff like that. So the first one is, Jeff kind of touched on this here. Marketers know that they have to speak to our lizard brain. So you may hear it, the monkey brain, the primal brain, it's all kind of the same concept. And really, humans, we have 2 types of thinking. If you've read Daniel Kahneman's book, he calls it type 1 and type 2 thinking. He won a Nobel Prize for it. So, you know, there's some substance there, obviously. Basically, we have our conscious logical side, which I think most people, if you think about thinking, it's probably this piece. You know, we're doing math problems, we're trying to solve a puzzle, that really concentrated logical side. But we also have this other side that's subconscious and emotional, right? We react to things. So I just want to take a quick poll here. So if you have your phone handy, you could do it on there. You can do it on slido.com if you use the code here. But I'm just curious, how much human behavior do you think is driven by that logical, conscious thinking part of our minds? All right, we have some difference of opinions here. All right, this is good. Give folks a little bit longer to get there and get in there. This is like, we need the Jeopardy music here. We see the numbers change and stuff, so people changing their vote. I love it. All right, so it looks like we're on the low end here. Let's see what. So the people on the low end were actually on the right track. So over 95, probably closer to 98% of our brain activity is subconscious. It's below what we're conscious of. So you think about living your life and going through your day every day, and 2 to 5% of what's happening reaches a conscious level. It's pretty I think it's a pretty kind of big awakening kind of revelation. And
Yeah.
really the gist of it is we don't think as much as we think we think. What happens a lot of times is subconscious things are happening in our subconscious. And then after the fact, we will go back and backfill the logic. Oh, I bought that fancy red sports car because I needed a car to drive to work, whatever. So we do it kind of in retrospect is the way that often works. So if we kind of jump back to kind of compare a little bit between these two types of thinking. On the conscious logical side, so this is kind of evolutionarily the newer part of our brain. It's newer, it's weaker. You know, if you've ever been really focused on something, doing hard conscious work, it's tiring, it gets tired easy, it takes effort. Compared to that subconscious emotional side, that's older, it's dominant, it's always on, we can't turn it off even if we wanted to, it's automatic. And in terms of sort of processing power, there's some research that says our conscious minds can process about 40 bits of data, 40 bits of information per second. When you compare it to that subconscious side, it's 11 million bits per second.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a wow sort of thing. And so that gives you a sense of the relative processing power of these two different parts of our mind. So it is, exactly, it's a wow, like that lizard brain is really powerful. And the way that it works is our subconscious mind, it's kind of like a big computer loaded with these pre-programmed behaviors. And the interesting thing to me is most of those programmed behaviors we acquire by the time we're 6 years old. So I don't know if anybody remembers the old book a long time ago, Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. lines up with this quite well. And to me, so that's sort of another kind of a big whoa moment. And so if you think about the work that we do, the work that you do, maybe the last project you worked on, if you were designing that for a 6-year-old, what would you do differently?
It would be completely different.
How so?
I don't know. I have to think about that. Well, definitely simpler, more action-oriented, more story-based.
Yeah.
More engaging because, you know, they won't have it any other way.
Right. Simple story, engaging. What else?
Interactive.
Appealing to their emotions.
Emotions.
Of course, visually dynamic.
Visuals. Probably simple, probably less.
Short.
Short, right?
It'd help if you could find a way for them to relate back to you what they're doing.
Right. So now, all of those things, my question is, which of all of those things that we just listed do you not like, right? Because I like colors and simple and shorter and engaging and all of those things. So where did we lose track of that at some point? I think largely, you know, we don't design for adults and children, we design for humans. So especially by the time you're 6 and you've got these behaviors, obviously there's, you know, you're not an adult when you're 6, but I think a lot of the principles apply. So when we think about that, think about, you know, how can you maybe move closer towards designing for that 6-year-old? I can tell you, I've done it. Sometimes it's challenging to get stakeholders to go along, but the times I've been able to do it, the audience is receptive and appreciative. So really kind of what we're talking about here with all that 2 types of thinking in the subconscious mind, we're living in this super modern world, but our brains are still functioning essentially the way that we sort of evolved up, you know, out of the ocean and out of the swamps and stuff like that. And so that's the first thing marketers really understand. If you're curious to read a little bit more about this, a really good book called Subliminal, How Your Unconscious Mind Reads Your Behavior. That's really good if you're curious to dig into it a little bit. And so the author, you know, his main thing here is we're not the conscious actors that we think we are. We're really driven by our unconscious mind. And so if you take that as one of the takeaways today, I think that will sort of change the way you look at things and might get you thinking about the way you design whatever type of content and programs that you design. So marketers leverage that, I think, a lot better than most of us L&D folks. So that's the first thing. Second one is another thing that marketers are really good at. They know the importance of first impressions. I'm curious, anybody ever had a boss or a colleague or somebody tell you, just get it out. It doesn't matter what it looks like, just get it out.
Oh, yes.
That ever happened? So I'm not the only one. That's good. So what marketers know is we're making these subconscious decisions super fast the first exposure we get to something. And what we see, hear, feel, that experience colors everything that comes after it. And then so what is often in our type of work, what's often one of the first things that we see?
A boring title page and learning objectives.
Yes, titles and headlines. So this is a lesson that I learned when I worked for Articulate in the community. I worked for Tom Kuhlman. I think the first blog post I ever wrote, like, he didn't even read it. He just read the title and he sent it back. He's like, I think we might have been on a call and he made like a snoring noise or something. Like, he's like, that's boring. Like, the title is the first thing you see. And, you know, the importance of that, 5 times as many people read the headlines as read the body or what comes next. That's really the determiner. Am I going to go any further? And I think most people on average don't really give the headline or the title much thought. It's kind of an afterthought. And David Ogilvy, who was a marketer, a really good marketer, that's who they kind of based Mad Men on. He says, you know, you work on your headline, you spent 80 cents of your dollar. Like, we really should put more emphasis on that headline, making it really, really good. So that's an easy thing to do once you sort of flip that switch and take that perspective. There's a couple of tools, and I use these all the time because they're super helpful. CoSchedule has one. They're both free, so you can go out there and just try out your titles. So if you ever, you know, you're ever revisiting courses, you're making a new one, go out and try some titles. And the way they work is type in a title and it will give you a score. So you can see this was an example I did for PowerPoint. You see PowerPoint 101 has a 0. That's really bad. Nobody's going to look at that, right? How to use PowerPoint. Okay, but the nice thing about this is not only does it give you a score, it'll give you some information about how to write better titles and headlines.
Great.
And, you know, you can click through to get tips of, you know, what makes emotional headlines powerful, and how do you do, you know, what types of words and emotional words and powerful words. And that by itself, we do this in the workshop. We give people some example, typical boring training titles and have people rewrite them and see who can get the highest score.
That's great.
So that's a really fun thing to do. And it's useful and it makes a difference.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll give you, at the end, I'll give you the place to, if you want slides and links and references, all that stuff, I'll give you a chance to get them again. And then sort of the whole idea of looks matters. You know, it's amazing. Marketers do A/B testing, and it's amazing what tweaking seemingly little things can do. So changing headlines, changing the color of a button, you know, choice of words, all that sort of stuff. It all really matters. And, you know, A/B testing is something we won't get into, but it's something that, another thing that we should probably steal from marketers and will help us sort of be more effective.
What is that actually? Just in a
A/B
nutshell?
testing,
Yeah.
you put out 2 versions of something and you see which one performs better, and then you go with the better one. So common one would be, say, using an email marketing platform. Let's say I have a list of 100 people or 1,000 people, whatever it is, and I'll do an A version and a B version. I'll send each of those out to a few and see what the response is. And then their software will automatically decide, says, okay, I'm getting a bigger click-through rate on version A, so send that to everybody else.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's another thing in the workshop we do, is we do some email marketing tools. There's a lot of learning stuff you can do with those tools. That's really cool as well. So this whole idea, this first impression, this automatic, this subconscious reaction, we don't know we're doing it. We say we'll never judge a book by its cover. That's actually wrong. We can't help it. We're judging the book by the cover no matter what. And the thing that's interesting is those first impressions impact the way we perceive the relevance, the credibility, and even the usability of what we're looking at. So it is important, and it all comes back to those first impressions. There's 94% related to design. So it does matter what it looks like. Could be really fantastic stuff, and it looks awful and whatever, and you don't give it the credibility that it probably should earn. So it's all happening super fast. So that stuff happens before our conscious mind even knows what's happening. So there's been some studies, Stanford and Google have done some studies, and it happens in a fraction of a second. So the original study, they saw effects at basically a third of a second, but they did other studies that they still saw the effect 30 thousandths of a second, which is less time than we can consciously register. So again, that's where we saw that data figure earlier, the relative power of that subconscious mind and how much it can process. That's sort of coming into play here. And so this quote, I think, really speaks to me a lot. There's no such thing as no design. If you don't do any design, it's probably a bad design. And so the alternative to good is always a bad design. So to me, good design, I think, is always a smart investment. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be Madison Avenue, super expensive design, but being thoughtful about it and being intentional will get you a long way to having a good first impression, and it matters, like we just saw there. So third one, marketers are good at telling stories. Somebody mentioned this earlier about marketers. Marketers are really, really good. I think marketers have some constraints we don't. So if you've got to get a message across in 30 seconds or 15 seconds, you got to get really good because you're super limited on time. And here's kind of another example. If somebody comes to our training team or our learning development team and they're like, okay, we've got to get the word out. Subaru makes safe cars. And I was guilty of this, and I still sort of fight this tendency still, is the first thing I want to go to is, I want to pull the safety, the crash statistics, and want to get all these facts and figures and all this stuff. And if you look at these charts and tables, that stuff's really hard to process, right? Like it's good data, but I can't deal with that. I start to shut down when I get all that thrown at me. I don't know where to go and where to start. And the thing to remember is it's not our logical mind that's largely in control of what we're doing. So the facts and figures are not going to be as effective as we probably intuitively think they are. And what marketers do, I'm going to show you a little 30-second clip, an actual Subaru ad. So we'll play this. and then we'll get your reaction. We'll talk about here. It's just like 30 seconds. So let me know, make sure you can hear it. Let me know if you can't.
They lived. They lived. They lived.
We lived, thanks to our Subaru.
Love. It's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
So if we compare those two approaches, which one's more impactful?
Well,
Me, for sure.
Which one, yeah, which one's more memorable, right? I love that. It's basically, it's 2 words and visuals. And it's got all the things we were talking about. It's short, it's emotional, it's visual. I love that commercial. I think it's a great example, and it's just being creative, right? Like they had 30 seconds, they couldn't put in all that stuff.
yeah, powerful and a great story, really, because at first you
Right.
don't really know what it's about. Yeah. it
Right,
keeps
and
going.
then you see that smashed up car, and they lived, right? Like that's all you need. That's like the ultimate unpacking of that message, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one more example from marketing, and this is something I think this is an easy one, right? Like put a little personality in the stuff that we do, where I'm 8 screens into an e-learning and they're still telling me about mission statements and all this like stuff. Like have a little fun. It's okay. You can do serious things and have a little personality and have a little fun. That's okay. I think it's even better. This is an example from Dollar Shave Club from a few years back. Dollar Shave Club was sort of the scrappy startup, and they're coming and trying to compete with giants like Procter & Gamble. So they couldn't do a traditional approach because they didn't have the money. So this is one of their early ads. I will say there might be a curse word or so in here, so a heads up for that. Apologies in advance. Let's watch this and then we'll talk about it.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are f***ing great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up! Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors, we're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
I know karate, I know jiu-jitsu, I drive like a gangster when I'm coming to see you, see you, see you, see you.
So that's like personality on steroids, right? And if we can't always get to that point, but it's something to aspire to add, like it's human, it's relatable, it's funny, it's humorous. And those are fun stuff. And that stuff's a lot more fun to build than, the information security policy stuff. But we can move, if we can move it, in that direction, I think everybody, including ourselves, would benefit. So that's, marketers telling stories. People have been telling stories since people existed, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years, however long humans have been around. And it's kind of the reason we survived. A story is much more effective. I don't think I have to probably argue too hard that, you know, a story is more effective, more memorable than a lecture, right? You can imagine the cavemen up there with cave painting and doing bullet points on the cave wall. And there's research that supports the fact that, you know, a story makes us more likely to embrace new ideas and messages. So literally, you know, our brains are literally wired for stories. And that's, you know, a large part and a big reason for why we're still around, and we're still, for now anyway, kind of running around the planet. So that's the third thing, stories. Marketers tell stories instead of using sort of facts and figures and the stuff that, like I said, even myself probably started off with. And then the last thing, marketers understand this, and I think training people understand this. We just may not always admit it to ourselves. Marketers know nobody pays attention. So there's a great example. This is a car ad for Skoda, which is an Eastern European car company. I think these are 30 or 60 seconds. Let's watch this. I want to talk about this one. This is my favorite one here. So here we go. Oops.
To test just how much attention the attention-stealing design of the new Skoda Fabia actually steals, we left one parked on this ordinary road in West London. We wanted to see if its sharp crystalline shapes, bold lines, and lower, wider profile would attract the desired level of attention. Will the 17-inch black alloy wheels stop passers-by in their tracks? Will the angular headlights attract the attention of other road users? Will a crowd gather to check out its fresh, sporty look?
All right. Did you see all the changes, things that changed? See anything that changed?
No.
So
I
a
just saw
person
the
walked
screen
through.
flashing. I just saw the screen flashing. What was
Okay,
that?
all right. Yeah, that wasn't it. But okay, so I'm gonna play the rest of this commercial,
Okay.
and then let's see what you think. Whoops, what happened? Come on.
Well, not quite. But did the attention-stealing design distract you from noticing that the entire street has been changing right before your very eyes? Don't believe us? Have another look. Did you spot the van changing to a taxi? How about the scooter changing to a pair of bicycles? Or the lady holding a pig? Let alone the fact that the entire street is now completely different. Didn't think so. So there we have it. Proof that the new Skoda Fabia is truly attention-stealing.
So if I had told you I was going to show you a video and the entire street was going to change, you would have thought I was crazy, probably. You probably think I'm crazy already, but that would have been another reason. If you've never seen it, the original version of this, there's one called the Invisible Gorilla. If you've never seen that before,
Yes.
they have two groups of people, one group in white and one group in black, and they tell you to count how many times the team in white pass a ball. And you get so focused on the team in white that literally a gorilla walks in the middle of the screen, beats his chest for 20 seconds, and then walks out the other side, and over half the people don't see it.
Oh, my.
So it goes, so what's happening is, you know, we have this intuition that if it's visible and it's distinctive, like a gorilla in the middle of the screen, that people will obviously see it, and it's just consistently wrong. So we think we're putting something, nobody can miss it, they can miss it, right? If we're not queuing it up right and setting it right, drawing attention to the right thing, it's really easy to overlook important information. So that's really important. And it kind of brings us up to this whole idea, like, if I don't get that initial attention, then nothing else after that matters, because nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to even know it's there. Even though you think it's so obvious, nobody would ever in a million lifetimes miss it. They can. So, that kind of brings us to the question of what kind of things are our lizard brains sort of hardwired to notice. Anybody want to venture any guesses of what our subconscious lizard brains are wired to see or to notice?
Threat,
I'm sorry?
anything threatening.
Threatening, right? Danger. Yep. That's one of them. There's three main ones. I'll give you a clue. The icons are a clue.
Ah,
Emotion,
Kinda.
okay.
You're on the right track.
movement.
Food,
Movement is definitely one for sure. Can I eat it?
Eat it.
and I love
Can
it.
I keep our race alive, the species alive, right? And then, will it eat me, basically, right? Survival. So those things. Now, if you can work those into your training content, call me because I want to know how you did it. But really, if we think about it, it's kind of why should somebody care? What are the benefits? Is it enjoyable? What are the consequences? That's really kind of for us. But like I said, if you can get, death or sex or any of that other stuff into your stuff, let me know because I want to know what you're doing and what your ideas are for that.
I was just going to ask you, gosh, how do you get that in there?
Well, I'll tell you a couple of things here kind of coming up here. So that's a timely question. And I say this as newsflash. It's not really a newsflash because anybody who's honest, nobody wants to read your stuff. Nobody wants to read my stuff. Nobody wants to read your stuff. But, it's nothing personal. Nobody wants to read anything. I'm guilty of this as much as anybody else. And there is a really great book. It's short, quick read. Stephen Pressfield is a writer, pretty well-known, popular writer. And this is, I like the subtitle here. It's kind of like Other Tough Love Truths to Make You a Better Writer. And so he's got two main things that he says everybody should do. First one is streamline your message, simplify it, focus it, pare it down. I used to work at an agency and we always said, unpack it, right? This needs unpacked a little more. It's easiest to understand form. So stuff you guys have already been talking about earlier. And then the other thing he says, make its expression fun or sexy or interesting or scary. This is that emotional piece that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Make it so compelling that they're going to lean in and they're going to want to know more. They're going to want to find out the rest of the story. And if you do that to everything you do, just apply that to everything, then you're going to do pretty well. And I add a third thing that I really believe helps those first two is make it visual. We talked about the visuals carrying the message, visuals adding emotion. So those three things, this is kind of like if you fell asleep and you just woke up, this is the one probably main thing I would say, this is the takeaway of today, is if you can, whatever you're doing, make it streamlined, emotional, and use visuals to do that, you're probably going to be on a good path.
I don't know.
Questions, comments, reactions to that?
Yeah, my main question is how do you get the stakeholders to buy in?
Yes.
Because they're the ones who are driving a lot of these things. I'm finally getting a couple of my clients to realize that that's what needs to change. We need to tell more of a story.
Yeah.
And not just bore people to death.
Yeah, I think you have to kind of do it, baby steps at a time. So we have to retrain because most people, stakeholders included, they only know what they've experienced. They only know what they saw in school. They only know the bad stuff they've seen up to this point. And so it's not easy, but it's very much worthwhile when, if you can do that first one thing I've learned, if you call something a beta or call it a test or to call it like it's less threatening to people and they'll let you do more stuff. just call it a beta. Say, hey, can we beta test this? You could offer, this is a great idea to use some marketing techniques and say, hey, can we A/B test this? Let's do a small group. I'm going to do this marketing version. Somebody else can do the old boring bad stuff. And then let's get feedback. And then we'll do whichever one is better.
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike. I also think that it needs to be part of your sales process.
For sure.
Like you can tell the story of how you do this when you're selling before you get to the place where you're designing.
Yep.
And I think the marketplace right now is poised for it, right? Because we're coming off of COVID, everything's, blended and changing, and it's a wonderful time to, try, like you said, a pilot or something.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the silver linings of the pandemic is a lot of the old excuses have sort of fallen away.
Yes.
And so I think it's an opportunity that we should, grab and run with. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do with the length, right? The bullet points and all. So I'm wondering how this ties into like copywriting, because I see this very long, sales copy, and I'm like, who is reading this? But apparently people are.
Nobody's reading it.
But I think maybe that's where the headline thing comes in, because from the headline, then you're like, okay, let me see what they have to say. But then you go on and on and on. But it's very prevalent. So that tells me that something there is working, but I just don't know what it is, right? Like, why do people still insist on doing that long, sales copy, which is a form of, I guess, internet marketing? So I'm just wondering how that ties into this conversation.
No, I think it ties in perfectly. And I think you're making a really good point. If I could only choose sort of one like superpower for, the type of work that we do, I think I would pick being a great writer, because you think about writing scripts and, writing is kind of one of those foundational things. And, when I worked at the agency, I worked with a guy and he could write about the grass growing and I would be on the edge of my seat. He was that good of a writer. And I think it's really incredible. Why people don't do it is, I think it's not taught in school, right? A lot of the stuff we see, textbooks and whatever other stuff, is kind of that long, boring, kind of not so great way. And so most of us probably emulate what we see growing up and stuff like that. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I know when I get stuff and I see pages and pages or screens of text, I just shut down, and it's really hard to process. So if you can write well, that comment I mentioned at the beginning, like marketers are really good at that efficiency of messaging. Like to me, that's one of the big things that we could steal.
I also think, Mike, it makes, when you're talking about that, it makes me think of sort of the sales funnel, right?
Absolutely.
The thing that brings you in is what we're talking about, the data points and the data sheets that back up all of the stuff when somebody's going to finally maybe make that decision. They've already made the decision because of this.
Yeah.
Now they want the detail. Well, that's a separate thing. It shouldn't be put all in the same thing,
And that's a really great point. We talk about that when we do, full day workshops. We have more time to get into detail. And we talk about the marketing funnel, right? Like somebody who's at the top who doesn't know anything about what you're doing, you want to give them different information and content than somebody who is an expert and has been doing it for 20 years, right? Like they've already been there, they've kind of bought into your program, versus they're brand new, they don't know anything about it, right? People at different stages, you don't give the same information and the same types of things to.
So could that be the thing with L&D, that we're trying to lump all of this together? We're trying to, cater to all of these people with the one messaging, because I think about the learning objectives concept. Like I'm an educator and I totally dislike it, but I have to do it for compliance reasons. Like I don't like it at all. I just feel like this is the most
Yeah. And it's,
boring thing ever to start, a presentation or a talk with, but we have to do it, right? So sometimes it's like, what's the, like, I guess from the stakeholder perspective, what you can do creatively versus what you have to do.
no, that's another really great point. And I'll kind of come back to like email marketing platforms, right? So what marketers are doing, if you're in a certain geographic location and maybe you've got some other demographic things, you're going to get different things based on somebody who lives somewhere else who's got other different demographic characteristics. And so I worked on a project for a healthcare system for an onboarding, and we built a form for them. So part of their kind of registration for the first day of getting hired and all that sort of stuff, they had to indicate, what's the facility they're working at, were they a doctor, a nurse, a staff? And so it was really short, quick, like 3 questions. But based on their answers, we could route them so that they got only the stuff that was relevant to their role and their location dynamically and automatically. So you do a little bit of upfront setup, and then that just runs itself. And then if you wanted to, you could extend it further, and you could build out a whole campaign around those demographics and geographic data points. So that's a great point. And marketers are, you're in your kitchen, your Alexa hears you talking about a mountain bike, and then you go to your computer and you're seeing mountain bike ads. They're light years ahead of us. I don't know, that's a big leap, but they do have the technology and the stuff, some of which I think we could tap into and benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other question I had was on the use of humor, right? Like, so I've been in training sessions where they're like, stay away from it because, not everybody finds the same things funny.
Sure.
It'd be like offending, a group of people. And so it's like, where's the balance there? Because I certainly like a good laugh. Like I enjoy, something that is humorous and lighthearted, but I just wonder.
Yeah, and that kind of gets back to your earlier comment or your point about knowing your audience well. So obviously, if you're sending it to a generic 10,000 people, you just know they all work in the same company. You probably don't have as options. If you're sending it to, a group of in a particular role or profession or something, right? If you know that, and if you've researched and had conversations and all the things that you can do, and you're sending personalized communications, then you've got more ability to be flexible with that. So it's probably more art than science, but it just, like a lot of things, depends on the situation.
One thing I wanted to mention was in approaching stakeholders, in a way, getting those statistics and data in front of them, supporting the fact that this is so effective and the results might be a way to approach it. You're maybe not using this story style and everything to put out that information, but you can have information that supports that it is effective.
And you have to market yourself in that sense, right? Like you just because you do it, I mean, you've got to market it so people know and kind of sell your better solution. So yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Point. All right. Anything else before we head towards the last stretch here? This link, if you dropped your email, it will automatically send you the slides, the links and references, my contact information. So if you have questions, I don't send anything to that. So I'm not going to spam you, or I'm not going to sell you anything. I don't have anything to sell. I'll give you a chance here at the end. The last one's got a QR code. So if you want to grab it on your phone, you can do that. So I just want to sort of kind of recap what we talked about here. So the 4 big things that we talked about a bunch of other things in passing, but the 4 things that were the big takeaways from this. Rory Sutherland is a marketer at Ogilvy over in the UK. He says the human mind doesn't run on logic any more than horses run on petrol. So I love that to kind of illustrate the point that we have to speak to that lizard brain, to that, be aware of the power of our subconscious minds. The next one here is the first second with your content might matter more than all of the seconds that follow. That is, if there are any. So that whole idea of making a great first impression, or at least as good of a first impression as possible. Third thing here was related to, you know, storytelling. Most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. And so humans are wired for stories. All kinds of research, there's tons of books around that. You can kind of read more and dig into that if you like. And then the last one here, if it doesn't capture our attention, it might as well not exist. So that's our invisible gorilla example. And I think this is something like, I've been guilty of this in the past. And, you know, when I was just starting out, oh, it's the annual training, they have to take it, right? Like we don't recognize always, or we don't sort of factor in for people have tens of thousands of things bombarding them every day. And their mind's probably not on our stuff unless we do something to get their attention. So we really can't never safely assume that we have it. So there's the link for the stuff again, the QR code if you want to grab your phone, and happy to hang out and talk more or take questions or whatever anybody wants to do. So thanks for hanging out with me a little bit tonight.
Oh, thank you, Mike. This is
Thank you.
great.
Yeah.
So much potent information here I'm trying to absorb. But anybody have questions? I wanted to give a shout out to Mike's weekly e-newsletter called Friday Finds. It's wonderful and I highly recommend it. It's just filled with tips and tools about our L&D industry and other thought-provoking information, even his favorite music of the week. So on his website, that link is up there to get that.
Yeah, you can get it through this. It'll be included with that. So thanks for saying that. I need to send you a commission check, but a commission of 20% of zero is still zero. But thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
And, you know, I always think of my best questions, you know, after I hang up or the next morning or I'm in the shower or whatever. So, you know, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. You'll have my email address if you grab this stuff. So if you have questions or if I can get you anything, feel free to use that.
Yeah, I will confirm that Mike has been easy to work with. We've connected quite a few times over the last few years, and he's spoken for this group before, so it's great to see him back.
Yes.
It's always good to hang out with fellow like-minded learning people, so it's a treat.
I also wanted to say that you really modeled what you were talking about today with this presentation in terms of, you know, the visuals are so impactful and then simple, clear messaging. And I'm sure in your workshop, you probably incorporate more story and all kinds of things, but it's really an eye opener. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I thank you all for joining us today, and especially Mike, thanks so much. And we'll hopefully be seeing all of you and Mike again in the future. Take care now.
Nice night, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
So I'm going to take a moment and just stop the recording. And then I'll save it.